Ezekiel stood on the edge of a desolate valley, a wasteland littered with withered, lifeless bones. A heaviness rested upon the air, like the earth itself had given up on hope. And in this black despair, there unfolded a promise of resurrection. Breathing life after death, calling us to believe in miracles. The flash of renewal in that barren valley was only the beginning. What if the key to unlocking greater wonders lies hidden in the most straightforward yet subtlest moment? Ezekiel's vision in the valley was something greater than a miracle spectacle. It was a call to believe in the impossible. And by this time, the prophet's heart pounded with a mix of awe and fear. He stood before a reality so unreal that it cancelled out every idea of life and death he had ever known. The desolate, dry bones before him spoke of an abandoned world, recollecting the grief and the pain of a people exiled from their homeland. And yet, amidst the quietness, there was an urge beyond certainty, a voice that purported to initiate renewal even in the depths of desolation. But when Ezekiel gazed upon the desolation, his mind whirled with questions. How could it be that such a desolate scene held within it the promise of hope? How could a valley full of what was left of abandoned lives be the backdrop for an extraordinary miracle? It was a moment of contradiction, the witness of utter destruction, crashing into the powerful possibility of life. The prophet's soul wrestled with the scope of God's vision, both the weight of his own despair and the call to believe in something greater than he could understand. The dry bones symbolized more than bodily death. They were the embodiment of lost identity, shattered promises, and broken dreams. In that strained atmosphere, an unexpected, inexplicable shiver ran through the valley. Imagine a moment when, in overpowering despair, nature itself seems to surprise. A whirl of wind sweeping the dust into a whirling dance, a fleeting gleam of light flashing off the barren ruins as if promising hidden beauty. This unexpected twist surprised Ezekiel, opening his heart to a deeper realization that each word of the scene was infused with God's purpose. Therefore, the prophet knew that the valley was not merely a graveyard of memories. It was a living canvas upon which God had intended to paint a work of restoration in the form of a masterpiece. His inner voice, a mixture of fear and awe, was urging him to step into the unknown, to believe that in this apparent destruction was the blueprint for a people renewed and a spirit revived. We are in a world of brokenness and despair, but the very richness of evidence for our failures and losses leads us to doubt the possibility of change. So the only option remaining is to take God's challenge to believe in the resurrection of life, even from the most unlikely sources. Ezekiel's inner monologue resonated with contemporary familiarity. Consider those times in our own experience when all seems hopelessly broken, a company on the verge of failure, relationships unraveling beyond salvage, or aspirations reduced to rubble by persistent defeats. We too stand in our own valleys of dry bones. But as with the prophet, we are asked to look beyond the current despair and believe in a redemptive force that can reclaim even the most lost parts of ourselves. In this charged gathering, every moment, the oppressive stillness, the shattered fragments of life, the unexpected gust of wind, was a metaphor for our own dilemmas. They remind us that revival is not an instantaneous leap from death into life. It is a gradual, almost unperceived journey that begins with one fearless act of faith. As Ezekiel prepares to follow God's next command, the open invitation remains. Can we presume to hope that in our deepest moments of despair, a supernatural force stands ready to infuse life into the very bones of our existence? The prophecy that emerges from this valley is not only visions of the past, it has a resonance in a modern miracle that transformed nations. But what can a centuries-old prophecy say regarding the breakdown of a fragmented world? In the bleak valley, surrounded by every withered bone bearing witness to loneliness and forsaken hope, the Word of God began to reveal its timeless essence. Here, the vision of resurrection and renovation was not simply a call towards spiritual renewal among the Israelites. It had become a transgenerational metaphor. And as Ezekiel stood before the scattered bones of the past, the record of rebirth took on a form that speaks profoundly even in our own day. Think of the transcendent moment on November 9th, 1989, the demolition of the Berlin Wall. The contemporary historical milestone was not only the removal of a concrete obstacle, it was the disintegration of ideological partitions and the regeneration of a people divided by years of despondency and exclusion. Like the Valley of the Dry Bones, Berlin was where hope lay motionless under masses of political oppression and human desolation. And then, in a near miracle, the wall fell, uniting a people divided and beginning a healing, redemptive process that echoes in the world today. But how do these two apparently unrelated events, the resurrection of dead bones and the fall of a wall that had divided families, relate? The answer is to be found in the foundational promise that there is hope for restoration, regardless of how seemingly impossible the obstacles are. Ezekiel's vision, replete with the imagery of bones uniting and muscles developing against all probabilities, reflects the shared desire for rejuvenation experienced at the destruction of the Berlin Wall. Both experiences illustrate that even the greatest cleavages, either within a spirit or between a nation, can be overcome when hope can be sown. Ezekiel's experience is a call to look at our own lives, our communities, and even our societies. And as recent history reminds us, when people are willing to challenge despair with hope and solidarity, change is possible. The coming down of the Berlin Wall was more than reuniting East and West. It was about rebuilding dignity, re-establishing trust, and infusing life into a people long left to die in isolation. At that time in history, when citizens of a divided city gathered to topple walls of concrete, a living witness emerged, one that echoes the ancient hope of restoration and renewal. But here is a caveat. As the new experience of the collapse of the Berlin Wall brought physical and political renewal, it also brought difficult questions. How do we maintain that solidarity in the face of ongoing divisions? What can we learn from an experience of such profound change? We see a divided society held together by distrust. Yet even as change forces were mounting, old apprehensions and fresh issues emerged with the fall of the wall, and so we are compelled to push ever towards healing and wholeness, encompassing both the spirit of restoration and the institutional steps required to sustain it. This powerful combination of old prophecy and new history reminds us that every breakdown, every collapse, prepares the way for renewal. Ezekiel's dry bones and the crumbling fragments of the Berlin Wall both teach us that in the darkest despair, renewal is at hand if we are merely willing to believe. They challenge us to look at our own lives and ask, where do we need to tear down the walls that confine us? What walls in our hearts, communities, or nations are waiting for that spark of rebirth? Just when you think that the revival process has reached its peak, there is yet one higher level to discover, a level that questions our own thought on transformation as an individual. How can a revival that brought nations together ignite a revolution in our own spirits? Ezekiel's vision answered not only to the fate of a nation, but also had a profound message about personal renewal. And that is the crux of the matter. The Valley of Dry Bones is less a political or social allegory. It's an invitation for all of us to come face to face with the hollowness inside us. The bones, shattered and left behind, are fragments of our existence left in ruin. Lost aspirations, splintered dreams, and affairs that long ago lost their bloom. Here, in this lush imagery, every fragment of bone symbolizes the past, echoing with our deepest regret and disillusion. But as we survey our own personal valleys, the challenge comes. How do we bring life to these reminders of what we once were? The prophet's experience reminds us that that first shock of devastation is only the beginning. It's the precursor to much more nuanced work of healing and restoration that requires both divine intervention and personal commitment. Picture, if you can, an instant of sudden insight, a flash of lightning on a dark night that illuminates all around you for a brief moment. An instant of awareness that even in the darkest night, a spark of hope can ignite a flame strong enough to chase away the longest night. Similarly, our individual journeys of renewal are marked by glimpses of insight and unanticipated inspiration. These are the points of change at which the burdens of the past no longer hold us prisoner, but rather form the base on which something new is constructed. We all bear our yesterday scars that testify to our battles, but the burden of those memories has the power to keep us stuck in position and fearful of going forward. Hence, the call to revival is not so much about miracles outwardly, it's about change inwardly, the kind that starts deep within and works its way outward, altering our tomorrow. This inner growth, just as bones are assembled piece by piece over time to construct a sturdy building, requires perseverance, patience, and above all, faith. Think of what occurs in a metamorphosis in nature. A caterpillar's struggle with its cocoon before emerging at last as a beautiful butterfly. It's no flash of magic, but a slow, painstaking process of rebirth. Similarly, our own personal rebirth isn't going to occur in a twinkle of an eye either. They are built incrementally, step by step, moment by moment, with each incremental triumph paving the way for an even more significant breakthrough. Imagine waking up every morning, the burden of the past still weighing, but with hope ahead that every breaking day brings new promise for renewal. There is that resilience in the human spirit that mirrors the insistent pull of life in even the most desolate landscapes. In these quiet moments of contemplation, when the world outside us seems stuck and immovable, the hope of renewal whispers sweetly, "There is more to your story than what you see now." It's a promise to believe that the process of change, however glacial, is both inevitable and miraculous. Since we are at the point of no return between hope and despair, the question that we must ask ourselves is, are we prepared to let the spark of revival ignite a flame within us? Will we take the leap of faith, enter the unknown, and erect our inner structures on faith as its foundation stone? And as we step into that first step, there awaits an unexpected twist in store, one that will demonstrate to us the true power of persistence and divine intervention. Just when you think the inner process has reached its climax, a surprise attack comes along, one that forces us to confront the deep-seated fears that have been holding us back. What if the process of renewal reveals our most hidden vulnerabilities? As we journey deeper into the realm of personal rebirth, Ezekiel's rich vision continues to resonate, revealing the intricate levels of transformation. In this vision, the dry bones symbolize not only the devastation of past defeat, but also the unspoken horrors that have held us captive for so long. In every corner of those fragmented fragments is the evidence of shattered hope and incomplete bereavement, a testament that resurgence is as much a matter of owning our scars as it is a matter of mending them. And yet, in this apparently dismal landscape, there is a glimmer of hope. Just as the prophet was summoned to give life to the dead, we too are called to confront our own inner barrenness. We admit our past wounds and the pervasive skepticism that saps us of energy, but we are many times immobilized by the sheer size of these emotions, thinking that they are too overwhelming to transcend. Hence, the path to actual revival requires us to embrace our imperfections and convert our vulnerabilities into stepping stones to a richer, stronger life. Picture a scene where a torrential downpour shatters the tranquility of a serene afternoon, forcing all into an instant of raw, unadulterated reality. This rain, much like the adversity we face, is unpredictable and does not give quarter. It cleans away the leftovers of our old life, bearing the bare, unclad core of who we are. While moments like these leave us in confusion, they also set off a profound rebirth. The tempest is not a destroyer. Instead, it purifies and prepares the ground for fresh growth. Just when you think the process inside has reached a climax, comes a surprise attack, one that puts us face to face with the hidden fears that have been holding us back. What if the renewal process reveals our deepest hidden vulnerabilities? As we journey deeper into the realm of personal renewal, Ezekiel's bountiful vision still resonates, revealing the multifaceted realms of transformation. In this vision, the dry bones signify not only the barrenness of former defeat, but also the unsaid horrors that have held us captive for so long. At every corner of those shattered pieces is the evidence of shattered hope and unresolved mourning, a testament to the fact that resurgence is as much about taking back our scars as it is about healing them. And yet in this apparently obscure scene, there is hope. Just as the prophet was commissioned to give life to the dead, we are commissioned also to confront our own inner barrenness. We see our hurts of the past and our general cynicism that sap us of energy, but we are too many times immobilized by the very size of these, believing that they are too big for us to get over. Thus, the path of true revival calls upon us to accept our weaknesses and turn our brokenness into stepping stones to a more abundant, certain life. Picture a scene wherein a downpour of rain shatters the tranquility of a serene afternoon, forcing all into an instant of naked, unadorned reality. This rain, as is the adversity that we face, is mercurial and offers no quarter. It washes away the vestiges of our former life, laying bare the raw, naked heart of who we are. Though such a time puts us in chaos, it also sets about a profound rebirth. The tempest is not a destroyer, but cleanses and clears the ground for growth. Just when you believe the path of rebirth is gaining momentum, a sudden modern-day twist is laid bare, one that leads us to challenge the boundaries of despair and the resilience of community healing. What does a global crisis do to the very essence of our strength? As we continue in our tale of transformation, the echoes of Ezekiel's vision begin to meet up with the happenings of our contemporary world. In this case, the Valley of Dry Bones is not a distant allegory, but a reflection of our shared suffering in the midst of modern catastrophes. The age-old battle between loss and the promise of rebirth acquires a fresh sense of urgency when we think about the earth-shattering changes that jolted our world in recent years. Take, for instance, the COVID-19 pandemic, a plague that moved around the globe at record velocity, leaving a trail of loss, isolation, and economic pain. In so many ways, this pandemic revealed our own valleys of dry bones. Families were shattered, communities were shattered, and the very rhythm of life was interrupted. Likewise, the desolation that Ezekiel witnessed, the pandemic took away the reassuring structures of our everyday existence and left us to confront a reality that was both alien and unforgiving. And yet, during that dark time, there had been an unarguable flicker of something, a time in which the globe united to reshape what renewal might look like. The virus that initially had generated only isolation and despair, as a byproduct, had allowed space for self-reflection and reimaginings. On streets and throughout countries, human beings began reconstructing their own lives again. Neighborhoods united to support one another, and simply being concerned was a revolutionary act of hope. We were all caught up in a global conflict that broke our routines, but the sheer scope of the interruption left us doubting if we could ever recover. So a new paradigm of collective resilience and adaptive creativity emerged. Picture this: a world where, amidst lockdowns and social distancing, technology became the bridge that reunites people. Virtual gatherings, online support groups, and innovative community initiatives sprung up, defying the solitude the pandemic enforced on individuals. It was a time of revolution in direction, a sharp deviation from the narrative of helplessness. This abrupt shift was a powerful reminder that even amidst overwhelming calamity, human kindness and creativity can spark the first sparks of renewal. This recent moment of contemporary crisis also compels us to question the way we see our individual strife through a broader lens. As Ezekiel the prophet was brought to bear witness and execute a miracle in a valley of dryness, so too were we forced to reinterpret the way that we live in the wake of a cosmic revolution. The fragile bones of our pre-pandemic lives, those habits, relationships, and comforts we had grown so accustomed to taking for granted, were laid bare, exposing the vulnerabilities that many of us had long ignored. And with that exposure came a profound opportunity, the chance to build anew on stronger, more compassionate foundations. The COVID-19 pandemic underscored a critical truth. While isolation can fracture us, it also sets the stage for transformation. It forced us to reimagine what it means to be connected, resilient, and hopeful in a world that can sometimes seem devoid of light. As the dry bones in Ezekiel's prophecy had appeared dead, so our pre-pandemic systems may also have appeared dead. But the crisis revealed that beneath the surface there was a reservoir of latent power and potential simply waiting to be activated. As we reflect on this modern moment in history, the correspondence is clear. Both the ancient and the modern accounts call us to confront despair head-on and hold on to the hope of rebirth. They provide us with the assurance that change, whether by a valley of dry bones or in the midst of a world pandemic, is a process. One that initially demands one solitary, courageous step into the chasm. Just as you can sense the movement of collective healing, another aspect of the journey awaits. One that shows us how our individual struggles reflect greater cultural issues. What if our inner struggle and outer conflict intersect? Here in our tale, the process of rebirth shifts from a collective healing to an internal struggle with our own demons. Ezekiel's vision was never simply about beholding a miraculous transformation in an empty valley. It was about understanding that the journey to rebirth begins within, with every broken fragment of our past. And here we reach the turning point where individual pain meets the universal struggle for hope. In daily life, we are usually standing at the point of conflict from within and turmoil on the outside. The dry bones of our innermost fears and regrets stand before us as a reflection of not just our individual failures, but also of the general problems of society that we face. We are all too familiar with the overwhelming burden of loss, disillusionment, and isolation, but these are compounded by the relentless demands of modern life, where global issues like economic disparity and social injustice only serve to further sap our spirit. Hence, the call to transformation is a personal as well as a collective imperative, which calls us to settle our internal conflict, but also to foster a change on the larger scale. Imagine this scene. A burst of vibrant street art suddenly materializes on a crumbling city wall, a sudden display of art and defiance amidst decay. This is a potent reminder that even in the most difficult of times, expression and art can be beacons of change and hope. Just as the spontaneous mural transforms a dull, neglected space, our own challenges can be battlefields upon which to prove strength and renewal. As we move deeper into the heart of our own battles, consider the internal dialogue that transpires when we're confronting our weaknesses. It is a conversation full of honest bluntness. The moment when we understand that every wound is evidence and every fall is a possible stepping stone to something higher. In this case, the dry bones represent not only what has been lost, but also what can be remade. They challenge us to face ourselves with hard questions. Are we prepared to face those parts of ourselves that we don't want to see? Do we have the courage to make something new from the fragments of our past? This individual accounting is paralleled by a wider social awakening. In so many respects, our own internal struggles are reflected in the international struggles for justice and reform. Societies around the world are looking to heal old wounds and to rebuild a shared sense of purpose. As we struggle to get past our own internal barriers, we become catalysts for change in our communities, transforming individual failure into communal success. This dual odyssey of healing ourselves and healing society is a call to engage both shadow within and circumstances without. The beauty of this process is its gradual unfolding. Just as the hard work of constructing dry bones into a significant form, our journey is punctuated in small victories. A kind word here, an act of self-compassion there. These small shifts may be subtle at first, but they build and build into a force for transformation. And as we proceed on this journey, the overall message remains the same. Genuine renewal is not a momentary thing, but an ongoing, often painful process that requires vulnerability and grit. In accepting this process, we are called to re-author our narratives. Our trials, although private, also speak universally, reminding us that our trials and triumphs coexist with the tapestry of our community. Healing, therefore, is not a solitary path, it is a communal process that ties us together in our common humanity. And so, with each step forward, we find that the path to renewal is just as much about empowering ourselves as it is about lifting those who are around us. Just as the convergence of personal and collective healing appears to have reached its pinnacle, a sharp twist introduces yet another level of transformation. What if the future of our journey is about igniting a movement that transforms the future itself? It is here that the tale of resurrection gets even more complex. We've witnessed the dance between our internal dramas and the overarching forces that govern society, yet now we stand on the threshold of a shift that transcends personal healing. It is as if the valley of dry bones has become fertile ground, not just for restoration, but for giving birth to a revolutionary movement with the power to reform our collective destiny. We have all endured the arduous process of our own healing and seen communities unite in the face of disaster, yet we typically do this in isolation, unaware that our struggles are a part of an enormous, unstoppable tide of change. So, we are called upon to use our individual victories as the sparks for fueling a broader revolution, one that dares to dream of what is possible. Imagine for a moment a scene that shatters expectations. A sprawling urban center, once riddled with decay and despair, suddenly bursts into life as murals, street performances, and community gardens transform neglected spaces into vibrant hubs of creativity. It's a statement of boldness that even in the driest of places, the environment becomes canvases of hope and creativity. The visual explosion of color and motion is a mirror of the inner revolution we experience when we finally decide to shatter whatever encircles us. In this phase, the focus is no longer just survival, but on active transformation. Our dry bones, the broken pieces of our past, aren't just being put back together. They're being rebuilt into something dynamic, strong, and forward-facing. It doesn't occur overnight, but more like the slow, deliberate work of an artist. Every moment is building toward a larger masterpiece. Every act of courage, every instance of vulnerability shared in our communities is a brushstroke in the work of art that is our tomorrow. This stage of the journey asks us to think beyond the immediate bubble of our immediate experience. It asks us to become change architects, channeling our recharged energies into activities that not only lift ourselves, but all those around us. The change is subtle and radical. It can start small, a community rallying to renovate a battered park, or an online community rallying to bring mental health out of the shadows. But these are the small pebbles that accumulate over time into waves much bigger than anything they started. As we step into this arena of change ahead of the curve, the struggle between what is and what could be is more and more real. The fight is real, doubt gets in the way, and the weight of former failure may seek to hold us back. But it is just in those very moments that the lesson of the dry bones becomes most powerful. Just as Ezekiel was commanded to see beyond the dead fragments that were before him, we too must envision a future where all failure is a stepping stone to something better. This appeal is a challenge and an invitation. It is an invitation to move on from the ruins of past failure and to build anew, something expressive of the power of the human spirit. It is a challenge to consider how each personal breakthrough, each moment of defiance against despair, contributes to the greater tapestry of change. In this context, the path to revival is not an individual task. It's a movement, a call to all who are willing to dream of a better, more harmonious world. Just when you think the road of rebirth is near its pinnacle, a revolutionary echo from history comes along, one that pushes the boundaries of possibility and challenges us to confront our most daunting challenges. How does such a disaster on this scale alter our collective spirit and enable the gateway to rebirth? As we approach the climax of our tale, the theme of rebirth comes to touch one of the most riveting pages in contemporary history. In this part of our journey, the vision of dry bones becomes increasingly relevant. The fragments of shattered hopes and splintered communities testify not only to personal loss, but to the blows that have been dealt to our collective consciousness. And yet, in the midst of such overwhelming barrenness, history teaches us that change is possible, even when the very ground beneath our feet seems to have dissolved. Look at the destruction brought by Hurricane Katrina in 2005. The catastrophic storm that leveled most of New Orleans and its surrounding neighborhoods was a period when nature's fury reduced successful populations into a wasteland of despair and devastation. Homes were destroyed, lives were shattered, and an entire way of life had to learn to adapt to a new world, courtesy of unimaginable destruction. Like the dry bones that lay scattered in Ezekiel's valley, the devastation of Katrina's wake appeared to represent hopelessness and desolation. But as the waters receded, something extraordinary began to take shape. The reconstruction after Hurricane Katrina was not merely a matter of building back structures, it was a matter of restoring the heart of a city. Neighbors came back, local leaders took up the challenge with renewed vigor, and a resilient spirit rose from the ashes. People had long been united by history and tradition, but the sheer devastation of Katrina forced a reckoning with the vulnerability of that familiar world. And so a common movement of healing and reimagining their future was ignited, one that took despair and turned it into an opportunity for rebirth. A gust of wind that can blow away the rubbish of the past and clear the way for new development, Hurricane Katrina tore down the status quo and revealed the need for reinvention. The trauma of the disaster created a void where outdated systems could be challenged and stronger, more resilient systems could be developed. This was not just about physical reconstruction. It was about rekindling hope, fostering cohesion, and renewing the value of community in the midst of unending adversity. The echoes of Katrina's regeneration are true to the thrust of Ezekiel's vision both times. The renewal begins both times by recognizing that there is a basic lifelessness, a state where everything known has been removed. Yet it is this same void that is the canvas upon which regeneration is colored. For individuals, communities, and even nations, the process of rebuilding tends to be about confronting the stark reality of what's lost and having the nerve to dream of what can possibly be regained and reimagined. In our own lives, we can see parallels to Katrina's aftermath in the midst of personal or communal crisis. When our inner life is a barren wasteland of dry bones, marked by past failures, shattered relationships, or forsaken dreams, we are called not to despair, but to undertake a process of deliberate and fervent revival. It is in such moments that the divine summons to restore life to our most arid areas is most urgent and compelling. The Hurricane Katrina tale reminds us that even in the worst destruction, there lies the hope of a transformation of wonder. It invites us to embrace our vulnerabilities, to seek the loveliness of rebirth, and to believe that each ending marks a new beginning. As we reflect on this echo of the past, we are called upon to ask, what in our own experience has been lost in the sweep? And how do we gather those scattered fragments into a new vision of what is to come? Just when you are convinced the cycle of rebirth has reached its final destination, a sudden, ultimate twist sets everything in its place. What if the culmination of one journey is merely the start of another, yet deeper volume of transformation? In this climactic section, we reach the height of our excursion into the Valley of Dry Bones, a vision that has stood the test of time, beckoning to us not merely for personal restoration, but for a profound awakening of our common spirit. As the echoes of Ezekiel's miraculous vision continue to resonate down through the ages, the final call emerges. A call to see that revival is an unlimited cycle, one that repeatedly renews and remakes every aspect of our life. We have witnessed the resurrection power both in the Bible and in modern life, but even as we celebrate our transformations, questions and obstacles still linger to remind us that our journey is not yet finished. So we are compelled to embrace every new ending as the gateway to an even more glorious beginning, a challenge to ever rebuild, redevelop, and revitalize our communities and lives. Here in this climactic moment, an explosive fireworks climax over a darkness of night sky, pouring colors of brilliant transience into the blackness, promising forever light. This climax reverberates that which marks the conclusion of our odyssey, a living, colorful assertion born of black, despairing desolation. The fireworks aren't ending, but our promise that the process of renewal is cyclic, each fire giving rise to potential rebirth. Think of a modern-day milestone in history that resonates with this sense. The non-violent revolution in Eastern Europe during the late 1980s and early 1990s, which transformed national identities and brought hope back to oppressed societies. As individuals from the former Soviet republics celebrated the freedom they were acquiring and started to rebuild their communities, so too are we invited to notice that every closing in our own lives holds the seeds of the next chapter. The end of one era is the fertile soil from which a more vibrant, dynamic future can grow. In our personal lives, this final segment speaks directly to the transformative power of concluding one phase and daring to begin anew. It challenges us to confront the parts of our past that we might be afraid to bid farewell to, our errors, our defeats, our greatest wounds, and to see them instead as the bedrock upon which a stronger and more optimistic life is constructed. Even when the healing has seemingly been completed, there is still the constant summons to continue seeking, to continue reaching for a life worthy of the redemptive power of faith and perseverance. The last word is one of obstinate hope. The Valley of Dry Bones, barren and desperate as it was, has taught us that no matter how hopeless a situation appears, there is always the hope of rebirth. This is the godly invitation to every broken heart. Your tale is never over. Every ending is the prelude to a new beginning. Every last gasp of the past holds within it the murmur of future miracles. It is this endless cycle of dying and being born again that gives life its such profound beauty and promise. And thus, as we finish this book of our life story, let us carry along with us the reminder that revival is not an event, but a process. Not one where we get to with one quick change, but by keeping on pursuing hope and restoration each and every season of our lives. According to Ezekiel's vision, may each of us gather the nerve to speak life unto the dead bones of our life, well assured that all movements we take with faith constitute affirmations of divine restoration's potential. And now, if this journey of renewal and restoration touched your heart, I ask you to go deeper still into the mysteries of prophecy. Next, our video, The Book of Revelation, awaits, where we learn another profound vision that shakes our view of the end and the ultimate promise of new beginnings.